Take a deep breath in and let it fall gently out. May this moment become a small inner sanctuary, a holy place rising quietly within you. May the mind unclench. May the breath deepen. May your thoughts soften like sand after the tide pulls back. Spirit, enter this place with light, not the harsh light that exposes with shame, but the warm, golden glow that helps us see what has always been true. Help us notice what is real. Help us release what is not. Help us remember what we knew before fear began rewriting the story. And with this breath, may our mind open enough to receive what is waiting on the other side of clarity. As always, beloved, you are not walking alone. There is a voice beside you, not lecturing you, not pushing you, simply companioning you through this delicate, luminous space we call the inner courts. These talks are not commandments, they are invitations, gentle reminders that something sacred lives in your ability to look within without fear. And if something here touches you, let it touch you. Let it sink. Let it become breath, or prayer, or quiet knowing. This is the garden speaking. The wisdom that comes alive when two souls dare to explore the holy place of the mind with honesty and reverence. Last episode, we stood together at the threshold, that quiet, trembling moment when you first cross from the outer courts to the inner courts. It's the moment of invitation, the moment of discernment, the moment when spirit whispers, "Come closer, there is more to see." But today, we don't linger at the doorway. We step all the way in. Because the inner courts are not a hallway to pass through. They are a realm to experience, to savor, to feel in your body, to understand with your spirit. This is the place where the noise of life finally fades enough for you to hear your own soul again, where the body that has been bracing for years begins to soften, where the mind, no longer scattering in every direction, becomes clear enough to reveal what has truly been shaping the relationship all along. And in this softened space, things begin to rise. Truth rises, patterns rise, old stories rise, fears rise, desires rise. The pieces you tucked away for survival, they rise too. Not to overwhelm you, not to punish you, but to liberate you. Because inside the inner courts, the relationship becomes a mirror. Not a mirror of flaw, but a mirror of formation. A mirror that shows you where the relationship has been built on fear and where it longs to be rebuilt in love. A mirror that reveals what you've been offering to others and what you've been withholding from yourself. Here in the holy place, nothing is rushed. Everything is deliberate. Everything is symbolic. Everything teaches. You've already left the outer courts. the survival instincts, the people pleasing, the noise of expectation, the identity you once needed to stay safe. You've stepped out of the reactive world, but you haven't yet reached the Holy of Holies. That veil still stands ahead, but not as rejection, but as a boundary of preparation. So the inner courts become the space where you learn to see clearly, to discern what is real, to separate truth from projection, to clarify what you're bringing into the relationship, to purify what no longer belongs, to prepare your inner world for deeper intimacy with spirit and yourself. This is where illusion dissolves and truth reveals itself. This is where the shadow self emerges, not as a monster to be feared, but as the part of you that has been waiting to be acknowledged. Here, you learn that the proper response is not rejection, but compassion and acceptance. You learn to hold your shadow with the same tenderness that Spirit has always held you. And slowly, something begins to shift. The mind that used to race in fear begins to rest in wisdom. You start thinking with the mind of Spirit, that quiet, knowing awareness within you, instead of the mind of fear. This is the real work of the inner courts, to transform how you see, how you relate, how you love, and ultimately, how you return to the Holy of Holies within yourself. Before we speak of lampstands, incense, or sacred bread, we must speak of the ones who tended them, because the inner courts were never a place of wandering. They were a place of stewardship. Only the priests and the Levites could serve there, not because they were superior, not because they held power over others, but because they were trained to hold sacred things with steady hands. They understood the rhythm of holy work. They knew how to keep the lamps trimmed, how to replace the bread without haste, how to offer incense without letting smoke choke the room. Their task was not domination, their task was devotion. And this matters for us today because your inner courts also require steady, sacred companions. Not everyone who loves you is equipped to help you tend the holy work of your mind and heart. Not everyone who supports you knows how to hold silence with gentleness, or truth with compassion, or your wounds without fear. The priest symbolized those rare souls who can walk with you through your inner work without trying to fix you, save you, own you, or shape you into something convenient. They are the ones with clean hands, not perfect hands, but honest hands. Hands that know how to hold without gripping. Hands that know how to guide without controlling. Hands that understand that transformation is a sacred journey that cannot be rushed. In the ancient temple, people waited outside the veil while the priest tended the work within. And in your life, there are people who belong in the outer courts, people you love, people you enjoy, people who bless you, but they are not called to handle the holy work of your becoming. Only a few are meant to enter with you. Only a few have the character, humility, and wisdom needed to help you cultivate clarity, expose illusion, and prepare your heart for deeper intimacy with spirit. These are your Levites, your priests, the sacred witnesses who help you keep the lamp burning, keep the bread fresh, keep the incense rising. And once we understand this, once we see that the inner courts are a place of shared stewardship, we can finally explore the meaning of the sacred objects themselves: the lampstand, the table of presence, and the altar of incense, each one revealing a different layer of the inner work of relationship. And together they form a map, guiding you deeper into the movements and awakenings of your inner life. Because these sacred objects were not decorations, they were living teachings in physical form. Each one holds a wisdom of its own. But the first lesson always begins with light, because before anything can be held, it must be seen. Let's move through each object gently. The first was the lampstand. Its flame was never allowed to go out. Day and night it burned, quiet, steady, faithful. This lamp represents your inner light, your clarity, your discernment, your ability to see truth without distortion, your capacity to see with spirit instead of fear, your vision unclouded by trauma, assumptions, or old stories. Inside the inner courts, this flame begins revealing what you didn't know you were carrying: inherited patterns, defenses you built to survive, the fear beneath your reactions, the story shaping how you interpret love, the shadows you unknowingly project onto the people you care about. And as the flame steadies, something else becomes visible. Because in the light, you begin to see not only the truth, but the shadows where that truth was hiding. You begin to see the wounds you tucked away because no one held space for them, the fears you disguised as confidence, the anger that was really grief wearing armor, the tenderness beneath your strong reactions, the child in you who learned to anticipate pain to feel safe, the unspoken longings you were afraid to voice, the assumptions built from old hurt, the stories you told yourself to stay in control. The light does not expose the shadow to shame you, it exposes the shadow to liberate you. So truth begins to rise. I wasn't hurt by what they said, I was hurt by what I feared it meant. I wasn't triggered by this moment, I was triggered by the memory beneath it. I wasn't reacting to them, I was reacting to the ghost of an old wound. The lampstand shows you what is real, what is projection, what is misunderstood, what belongs to you, what belongs to them, and what belongs to the past that you keep dragging into the present. The lamp does not judge, it simply reveals. This is not judgment work, this is illumination work. Clarity is not a weapon, clarity is mercy. And tending the lampstand is the daily practice of reflection, mindfulness, honest self inquiry, boundaries, accountability, inner listening. This is where the mind stops defending and starts discerning, where fear loosens its grip and truth finally has room to breathe. Once the lampstand has done its work, Once the flame has illuminated what is true and revealed the shadows longing to be loved, the soul is not left exposed, it is guided. Because revelation without nourishment becomes overwhelm. But revelation with nourishment becomes transformation. And so, in the rhythm of the inner courts, light naturally leads to sustenance. The illuminated mind is now ready to be fed by presence. In the holy place stood a table covered in gold, holding 12 loaves of bread, the bread of presence, the showbread, the bread that symbolized God is here continually, steadily, faithfully. 12 loaves for the 12 tribes, the fullness of the people, the fullness of identity, the fullness of belonging. Meaning this: nothing in you is left out of God's presence. Not the healed parts, not the hurt parts, not the questions, not the contradictions, the fragments, the becoming. All of you is invited to be fed. Once the light reveals, the table begins to nourish. The table of presence held bread, a symbol of identity, belonging, and covenant. It teaches how to show up in relationship without performing, without hiding, without armoring yourself in old habits. Presence becomes the new nourishment. Here you learn how to stay instead of withdraw, how to listen without preparing your defense, how to receive truth without collapsing, how to ground yourself when your fears rise, how to honor others without abandoning yourself. Presence is not passive, presence is strength, because presence allows you to say, I heard what you said, not what I feared you meant. Presence lets you remain connected even when discomfort visits. Presence rewrites the relationship from reactive to responsive, from survival to connection, from fear to trust. Inside the inner courts, illumination alone is not enough. You need grounding, you need stability, you need spiritual nourishment that keeps the mind from slipping back into fear, back into scarcity, back into old interpretations. The table of presence is where the mind learns to eat again, not from anxiety, not from illusion, not from survival, but from spirit. This is where you learn to feed on what is true: stillness, the mind resting without running; gratitude, the heart remembering goodness; grounding, returning to the body, to breath, to now; remembering what is holy, not lofty, but real, intimate, present; returning to what is real, peeling away fear's exaggerations; choosing what you consume with your attention, because not every thought deserves your energy. Here, the mind becomes steady. Here, the mind becomes rooted. Here, the mind stops chasing every wandering imagination and begins feeding on what brings life rather than depletion. At this table, you learn to remain without fleeing, without numbing, without forcing clarity to come faster than it should. The table of presence teaches how to stay in your body, how to stay with your truth, how to stay with your partner, friend, or companion without shutting down or spiraling out. how to stay connected to spirit without abandoning yourself. This is the nourishment needed before you can approach the final object and the deeper work of the inner courts. Once illumination reveals and presence nourishes, something softens inside you. The mind becomes clearer, the breath becomes deeper, the heart becomes steadier. And from that steadiness, a new readiness emerges, a readiness to release what you once clung to in the dark. Because after you are fed by truth, after your mind is grounded in presence, the next movement of the inner courts is simple and sacred. You begin to offer back what once protected you but no longer serves. This is the natural progression of healing, illumination, nourishment, and then release. And that release has a home. It rises from the altar of incense. The altar of incense invites release. It is the place where old stories burn away, not in a moment of dramatic deliverance, but in the slow, faithful rhythm of breath, breath by breath, offering by offering, surrender by surrender. Here, you finally let go of the narratives that were once survival strategies, but have now become spiritual burdens. Everyone leaves. I'm too much. Love has to be earned. Honesty is dangerous. If I speak, I'll be punished. Conflict means abandonment. I have to hold everything together. These stories don't disappear because you reject them. They dissolve because you exhale them. The incense rises, and with it rises your honesty. Not the sharp honesty of accusation, but the soft honesty of revelation. The kind that says, I'm realizing this fear isn't about you, it's about what I survived. I'm seeing how my past has been shaping the way I interpret your presence. I don't want to keep reacting to old wounds in the presence of someone who is actually safe. This is the honesty that restores connection, not reactive, not defensive, not performative, simply true. See, at the far end of the holy place stood the altar of incense, the final object before the veil, the threshold into the Holy of Holies. Here, prayer rose like smoke, but this kind of prayer is not begging, it's not bargaining, it's not graveling. Prayer is breathing. It is releasing old patterns, exhaling the stories that distort love, inhaling the breath of spirit, letting the nervous system soften, letting the mind return to center, preparing the soul for deeper union with the holy. The incense teaches the mind to rise, to release what no longer aligns, to surrender what cannot be carried, to offer every lingering fear into gentler hands. Here, resistance dissolves. Here, the ego loosens its grip. Here, surrender becomes natural. This is the last preparation before the veil, before union, before the Holy of Holies. This is the final work of the inner courts, to exhale what blocks love so you can inhale what is truly holy. Inside these inner courts, the work is gentle but also precise. This is where the mind is cleansed of old noise, clarified of false identities, freed from the lies you once believed about yourself, separated from illusion that kept you small, restored to the truth of who you really are, prepared for the Holy of Holies. Most people never reach this stage of spiritual maturity, not because they are unworthy, but because this work requires a rare combination: honesty, humility, silence, and willingness. The holy place is not glamorous, it is faithful. It is the daily tending of your inner lamp, the courage to keep looking at what is true. It is the daily choosing of what you feed on, the decision to nourish the connection rather than starve it. It is the daily rising of your breath toward divine, the slow surrender of stories that no longer serve love. And here is the mystery. When two people engage in this inner court's work together, illumination, presence, and release, something sacred begins to happen between them. The relationship shifts from battling shadows to revealing truths, from reacting from old wounds to responding from clarity, from fearing being known to feeling safe to be seen. Inside the inner courts, two minds begin to breathe together. Two hearts begin to listen together. Two souls begin to rise together. It is not dramatic. It is not explosive. It is not loud. It is steady. It is holy. It is transformation at the speed of truth. This is where relationships become altars of healing instead of arenas of fear. This is the sacred work of the inner courts, the work that prepares you for the veil, for the deeper journey, for the presence waiting beyond. I'd like to leave you guys this week with this reflection: tending the inner courts. May you meditate on it until we meet again. Take a slow, steady breath. Let your inner world grow quiet enough for you to feel yourself entering the holy place, not as a distant memory of scriptures, but as the sanctuary within your own mind. See the warm, steady glow of the lamp. See the table set with quiet nourishment. See the incense rising like a simple, honest prayer. Let your soul settle here. Now gently ask, what thoughts in me are ready to be illuminated, not judged, just seen? Let the light fall softly on what you've avoided. Let clarity rise without force. What truths have I forgotten that I now need to taste again? What wisdom have you starved yourself from? Where are you hungry for what is real? What patterns or reactions am I ready to release? Feel the old shells loosening, the illusions you no longer need falling away. What light within me needs faithful tending? Is it my creativity, my honesty, my courage, my tenderness? Name it gently. What prayer is quietly rising from my soul right now? Don't craft it. Don't shape it. Just listen. The heart knows how to pray without words. Then breathe again, slow, deep, and present. Allow yourself to feel the holy place within you, the part of you committed to illumination, nourishment, release, and communion. Here in the inner courts, you are learning to tend your own sacred life.
May your thoughts grow quiet enough to hear the truth beneath them. May your mind become a sanctuary cleansed of old noise, prepared for new wisdom. May the light within you reveal what fear once hid. May your presence nourish the hearts you love and steady your own. May those who enter your inner courts walk gently, listen deeply, and speak with love. May your lamp burn bright, your table stay full, and your prayers rise like incense until every old story that no longer honors your becoming softens and releases. And may the holy place within you become a sanctuary where clarity, compassion, and connection lead you gently toward the veil.